Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Collider YouTube channel for another TIFF 2021 interview. I am beyond thrilled to be talking to the director and the producer behind Dashcam, Rob Savage, Douglas Cox. Welcome to the channel and congratulations on your film.
Hey, Perry, thanks. Thanks for having us.
I am so excited to talk to you guys. So first, I have to obviously reference Host, and I want to know why Dashcam to follow up Host. Actually, Rob, was this the movie that you were referring to when you said one other project could have gone first before Host?
It was a project that we had. We had a kind of very rough idea for this film, a one-pager that we'd worked out, that we were pitching out before anyone had heard the word COVID, and nobody was interested. You know, we pitched it to we pitched it to all the places you'd expect, and none of them were interested. We were pitching it as a web series at some point, and then as a movie, and it just kind of like was one of those ideas that float about for a little bit and then disappear. And then, you know, towards the end of making Host, it's such a kind of lovely experience working on Host and working with that team of people, that I wanted to find something that was kind of in that mold, but a bit of an elevation and a bit of a different beast, but we could kind of make it using the same momentum that we had from Host and with the same collaborators. And this project seemed like something that we could do and that could benefit from a bigger budget from Blumhouse, but could still be made in that kind of nice, homemade, intimate way that we made Host. And it kind of grew from there. I mean, really the pitch was just, you know, it was just about a live streamer who runs afoul of a demon. It wasn't particularly sketched out, but it felt like a nice challenge to go from something where you're literally just inside your homes to something that's a road movie, that's a chase movie. It felt like a kind of a fun thing to do.
It was certainly a challenge.
I feel like that's all you guys know how to do, especially with screen life material. So, so Douglas, Rob brings this idea to you. What do you circle on the script in red and say, you know, this in particular, this is going to be an even bigger challenge, even though we had so much experience working with this type of content on Host?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like it was similar to Host, the way this sort of those early stages came about. You know, Rob, along with Gemma Hurley and Jed Shepherd, they were kind of working on the story and chatting with Annie and sort of, you know, building that framework up. And at the same time, you know, we were turning around production and figuring out locations. Rob was like trying to just putting all these tweets out, and all these sort of random people around the UK were like coming back with these mad places that we could maybe go. And a lot of that really dynamically built up all of the things that we could do or we could attempt. And then, you know, as these things started popping up, you know, Rob would phone me up and be like, so, you know, what about this? And a lot of it would then
constantly evolving process.
Yeah. And we obviously have all these wonderful HODs and collaborators, you know, most of whom we worked with on Host as well, and lots of new people as well, because we scaled up, you know, quite significantly on this one. And, you know, Rob's style is always like, you know, what can you offer? It's this like real kind of, there's a real joy to the collaboration on this. And I think it doubles down on what we did with Host, which was, I think, just a real triumph of faith-based filmmaking, where you bring together a team of people who know each other, who trust each other, and figure out the craziest, most batshit things that you can do together. And yeah, it was mad challenge shooting out in the middle of the second UK lockdown. We had a team of people traveling around the UK, and just a huge amount of you know, credit to them all, because, you know, we shot for 5 weeks for our principal shoot, and in really, really difficult conditions with a very small team, and they all really, really looked out for each other, cast, crew, and we got through it all with no cases. So it's a real mark of pride, I think, on this production, and a real testament to everyone who took part.
I have a million questions about the elaborate set pieces you guys crammed into this movie, but backtracking a bit to the scripting phase, Rob, I'm curious, what was it like for you moving beyond the time limit of a Zoom call after Host? Did you find that freeing, or maybe the lack of definition in that respect being maybe overwhelming?
it was a little overwhelming. It was more about just trying to find the language of the movie. You know, with Host, the nice thing is that it was really clear, because it was exactly, you know, it had to feel like a real Zoom call. It had to feel exactly like the Zoom calls that everyone was sitting on day in, day out during the lockdown. So we had a very specific feeling to aim for. Whereas, you know, with Dashcam, you know, for one, it's a single camera film. It's one live stream that we cut into, and sometimes we play long. So some scenes are kind of tricked to look like long, elaborate single takes, and some scenes are much more jagged and you know and jump cutty and improvisational. And it was about kind of like finding that. Finding the balance between like letting Annie's personality as well start to shape the film as she started to you know, she became the kind of crucial collaborator who came on during the shoot. And you know, just like with Host, we had a beat sheet of bullet points that we didn't really reference it while we were shooting. We didn't have sides. We didn't turn up and say this is what we were doing. Every day we would turn up and discover it with the cast and crew and improvise and find what the film ultimately is. And so much of that was on the day, and so much of that was just talking constantly to Brenna Ranger, our amazing editor who did Host as well, who was editing as we were shooting, and we would kind of chat every night about what was working, what wasn't working. We'd try and find the language of the film and how the edits were working, and what kind of coverage would give us the best shot.
And I think off the back of that as well, like one of the really lovely things about Host, and I think it's again testament to the support from the places behind, like, so Blumhouse were incredible with this one, and knowing that we were going into shoot with no dialogue made it like kind of impossible to do dailies and sort of, like those kind of notes where you can really get a sense of the exact length of something. And Rob being allowed to create an environment and a film that was able to find its best length, like naturally and organically, and really embrace the kind of chaos of it, and let Annie do her thing and find all these really like incredible things that you could never
script.
You could never script, some of her madness, and that was really, it was a real privilege.
Speaking of that madness, I'm sure you're getting a lot of this right now, but I do have to ask, what was the motivation behind making your main character as controversial as Annie?
I just think there's no harm in spending time with people who don't have the same opinion as you. And I think that at some point in the very near future, we're going to hit a wall where there's going to be a certain chunk of the population that aren't going to get vaccinated, and we're going to have to live shoulder to shoulder with people who demonstrably don't share our values, live in a reality that's slightly off from our own. And also, Annie's playing a much more kind of cartoonish version of herself in this movie. She's she's got just a genius mind that was key in the same way, as on Host, we had this group of friends who had this really nice, natural, easy chemistry that I relied on so much day in, day out when I was shaping the film. Working with Annie, relying on her wit and her spontaneity and her creativity was huge and essential. And we wouldn't have been able to make this film in the way that we did without her. So, I think it's important to talk about Annie, I think, as a collaborator on this movie, and not the subject of this movie. She's not, we're not making a documentary about Annie. She's, she's a much more, she's a much less abrasive character in real life than she is in the movie.
I think it was an interesting one for me, like kind of going into this, and the conversations at the beginning were, is it going to be Annie, or are we going to find an actor? And like kind of, it's kind of a wild, move in a way to step into a space like this with someone who's like not got that kind of huge background in acting, and she's obviously just this incredible performer with all of her other kind of work that goes on, and then a lot of the other cast around her as well. Like it was again, it found itself quite well, and just being able to sort of set Rob off with these people each day and each scene. It was really wonderful to see a lot of that evolve, through the camera. as we were shooting.
Just to follow up on something you just said, Douglas, was there a time when you were collaborating with Annie on developing the project, but weren't necessarily sure that she was going to star in it?
Well, the original idea, because she actually does this show, Bandcar, where she drives around and improvises music. And, when I first, Jed showed me the show, and the first kind of conversations were like, oh, that's a cool setup for a found footage movie. And the version we were kind of taking around pre-host was very much just using the Bandcar setup. But the idea was to probably take it to studios, to probably try and get an actor to play that role. And then it was really kind of like the experience I had working with the cast of Host, and really kind of inviting that level of collaboration from the cast made me think that, like, the way to do this movie and to make it something different and something exciting and something a bit dangerous is to fully engage with Annie and let this film carry her personality, and let the same way that Host, when I think about Host, I think about that group of girls. When I think about Dashcam, I think it really captures the mad chaos of Annie Hardy, which, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is down to the viewer. But it's, that was the intention going in.
And I think, just to speak, on that as well, like, I have a huge amount of respect to Annie for trusting us to kind of to work with her in this way. Like, we met obviously virtually. I spent some time with her chatting on Zoom, and obviously Gemma and Rob and Jed spent a bunch of time chatting with her and talking through things. And it was difficult. Like, we were shooting at a time where a lot of the rules are only just beginning to form in the UK about how we could like manifest a production in the middle of COVID, and there was lots of changing, fluctuating kind of rules and conditions. And we asked a lot of people, Annie included, Annie especially, in fact. She was coming over, there's lots of quarantines, huge amounts of testing going on, and I think it's like it was that collaboration again. Like, she fully stepped into our gang for the film, and like really kind of became a real part of that film family, as you always do with these kinds of shoots. It's
like you said, she whatever her beliefs, she followed the testing regimen. We had no cases on the shoot. It was she's super respectful.
I have a very specific question about the live stream element now. Rob, what was it like figuring out precisely when to disconnect and reconnect the stream? Other than when the action of the film necessitates it, how did you decide when you wanted her viewers to be able to see what was happening to her?
We had I think there's like 4 disconnects in the movie, or 3 disconnects, and I think two of them I kind of like plotted quite early on. There was the moment when it first happens, which the first time that we're left alone in the whole movie, which I just wanted to feel like this holy shit, we're on our own kind of moment, and it just happens as something because the whole thing with a live stream is, as soon as something happens that the audience can see, that's really that's proof of something supernatural, everyone within the movie world sees it as well. So you have to play breadcrumbs for the first half of the movie in terms of what you can show, because if you see somebody get their head pulled off on a live stream too early, the police are going to get called. There's going to be real world ramifications. So there's a point of the movie where things really start to amp up. And you start, we wanted the audience to see something that nobody else is privy to. And then to be left alone, especially since it's our first sequence in the middle of the woods. And this is also a movie that scratches my like lifelong desire to make a scary roaming around the woods by torchlight movie. And I wanted that bit to just be me and the audience. And then I knew that I wanted the kind of final stretch to really be Annie without a friend left in the world, bedraggled and on her own, and to feel the isolation of that. And then there was a middle one, and there was one in the middle that me and Brenna, the editor, just made up because we were like, this is too busy, let's just get rid of it.
Did you ever ask Brenna what she found more difficult, editing Host or editing Dashcam?
No, maybe I did. I think she'd probably say Host. I think Dashcam Dashcam was difficult, I think, because I was allowed to be in the room, so I was there to sit over her shoulder, and but no, I think with like Dashcam was fun. Like editing with Bren on Dashcam was a blast. Like it was so nice as well. As soon as the rushes started to come in, and she started to see what we were doing with Annie and how we were kind of placing Annie, this character that you wouldn't normally see in the middle of a horror narrative. We're plonking her in the middle of this, otherwise quite conventional horror story. I'd shown Brenna some of Annie's stuff, but when the rushes started coming in, Brenna just totally got it straight away, and totally got Annie's humor, and totally got Annie's kind of anarchic streak, and a lot of the first stuff we shot was the first 20 minutes of the movie, and Brenna was sending these just fucking so funny and energetic first cuts in. Like so much of the first 20 minutes of the movie is pretty much what Brenna sent me on her first assembly.
And it's funny, actually, there's it's obviously very different, but there's a lot of similarities to Host in terms of the way that process worked, because that early stuff where it was lots of improv, lots of playing around, we had so much more like gold there, and it's a really interesting exercise in like stepping that horror narrative forwards, if or just sitting with Annie for so long. But I mean to speak on the comments as well, like that was a monumental challenge that so many people need to take some credit for, but Dan Hawkins in particular, who was our kind of animator on that, and we basically had to create our own bespoke piece of software to run this, because it was so involved and so high scale in terms of the amount of information coming through. So like on Host, we placed every single graphic, and there were about 4,000, but this is all animated, it's all moving. We needed to be able to change things, and I mean, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and I'm like just sort of having a little moment of PTSD thinking about it now. But
don't just bury it down. Bury it down.
But it was also just I'm really delighted at where it's ended up, because like hopefully audiences will get an opportunity to see this again and again, and you can watch this film quite a few times, and there's lots of fun things to take away from that section in particular.
I will tell you, 15 minutes is not enough to discuss this production, but I am determined not to derail your TIFF schedule right now. So I'm going to say congratulations and thank you for chatting with us about Dashcam.
Thanks so much.